What is up, my little Deinos? Vepsis here, your host of the Helsinki Hydreigons, and we are here for the NCP Season 4 draft analysis when we are gonna be going through my team that I was able to select for this season. And this is gonna be my first time around in this league in itself. And big thank you goes to John Jr. who invited me, and make sure to check out the coach lineup, which will be linked down below in the description, because that lineup is pretty stacked and we are gonna be having a very competitive season, as I was able to see from my schedule in itself. And something that I need to mention compared to the UBL Season 5 that is going on right now in my channel as well, as I'm recording this, this is actually now DLC 2 Draft League in a Wi-Fi scenario. So the most recent expansion that we got in the game will be included in this game, and all the mods that we got access to, barring any kind of banning scenarios that some mods were too good to allow for this format. But now let's go and see what I was able to draft in round 1 with my 10th pick overall. And as my round 1 pick, I was able to select myself URSHIFU single strike, and this mon, I'm really happy that it fell for me in my position, because I really wanted to use this mon first time in a Wi-Fi scenario. I have used this thing once in a Showdown League just recently when the DLC 1 was the most recent expansion draft, and I was really successful with it, winning a championship in that league. And this thing was big part of it. Within 10 games it got 26 kills, and I'm hoping that I can do something similar regards to the results eventually with this mod, how many kills it's gonna get. And obviously the championship would be nice that I can do that again with this mod. But like I said, this season is gonna be very competitive and it's gonna be very tough ride for us. But I'm most importantly really excited to use this thing with Dark and Fighting. It's a very hard dual typing to switching to, barring fairy types that are the only things that can resist that typing, barring like bug fighting, like Buzzwool can also do that. But this thing gets proper coverage moves to hit those typings with Iron Head, Poison Jab, or flying moves as well, that it gets access to hit Buzzwool in itself. So it's gonna be a very tough mod for any team to switching on with 130 base attack stat, and with the dual stab of close combat and wicked blow both being basically 120 base power moves. It's gonna be really fun for me to be using this mod, and very tough for my opponents to try to deal with it 1v1 in itself. And I love the fact that it also gets access to U-turn, and momentum is gonna be key aspect of my draft as we go along, and that's gonna be big reasoning for some of my picks why I'm selecting them over something else that could have done similar thing for my draft. But now let's go and see what I was able to select in round 2. And as my round 2 pick, I was able to select myself Slowbro, and this is a purely a comfort pick for me. As you can tell, I picked it actually in round 2 in UBL Season 5 as well. But I wanted to make sure, like I said, I wanted to have momentum on this team, and there are only few water types that I really like that get access to momentum move currently, and Slowbro to me is by far my favorite to use. And I use this thing in a Showdown League as well alongside with URSHIFU single strike, and it just goes so well with it, covering the fighting weakness, giving the slow teleport, and also having access to future sight, which is really cool move to as well to utilize as well, cause that can be the difference maker of URSHIFU 2 at KOing a bulky physical defensive fairy type or not, when it gets the future sight on a right turn along with its auto attack that it's going for. So those are kind of like the important synergy that you can tell between the first 2 picks that I'm going after, and I know these 2 work together because I just used them recently in a league in a great success. So I'm hoping that I can replicate that. And now let's go and see what I was able to pick in round 3. And as my round 3 pick, I was able to select myself Rotom Heat, and after I got Slowbro, I knew this is going to be the Rotom form that I want to have on my team, because Rotom was definitely on my radar if I didn't pick Slowbro on that turn. But since I opted to go this route, which I'm more comfortable with, I decided that now it's time to take Rotom Heat as a fairy resist and a flying resist for my URSHIFU, and getting access to Volt Switch once again, that I really wanted to have these momentum options on my team. And with access to heavy duty boots now as a new item in Generation 8, Rotom Heat got way better with that, along with all of the other mons that are weak to rocks in itself, and it can now be a lot better pivot and in my eyes it's actually the best Rotom to use in traffic format. I know for some it's still Rotom Wash, but personally I believe Rotom Heat is the best one right now to use from Rotom form. So that's gonna be the round 3 pick. Nothing too special there other than the typing synergy and the momentum options that I wanted to add. And now let's go and see what I was able to select in round 4. And as my round 4 pick, I was able to select myself Diggersby, and this wasn't actually intentional that I'm picking it once more, just like in UBL Season 5. I was actually looking to pick either Nidoqueen or Nidoking at this point of the draft, but since both of got taken, I was like, you know what, I guess it's just destined that we are gonna be uniting forces here once more with Diggersby. And let me tell you about Diggersby and URSHIFU single strike. When the Panda and the Bunny are uniting forces, shit gets ugly, man, for my opponents. Like, nothing wants to switching on these two when they are going in, and I'm really excited to use those two together and individually as well as a monster. I love Diggersby in a traffic format, and I love the fact that it's another mod that gets access to U-turn. It gives me spikes if I feel cheeky enough, pun intended I guess, when I'm talking about Diggersby. And yeah, it's just another strong wall breaker that I was looking to have on my team, and a potential strong Scalper option if I prefer either Diggersby to be the Scalper of that week, if I bring Scalper at all, or will URSHIFU single strike being one for that. So it gives me a little bit of options in that regard if I don't feel like both of them have to be a wall breaker that week. So that is going to be the Diggersby, and let's go and see what I was able to select in round 5. And as my round 5 pick, I was able to select myself Noivern, and more as we go along, we start to think that you're just drafting your UBL Season 5 draft, but that's probably the case. But you know what, I just love these mons that I've been picking that are both in both of those drafts, and Noivern to me has become one of my favorite mons to use in traffic format because I love Frisk ability and the fact that with heavy duty boots, just like any other mod that were used to be weak to stealth rocks, or still are, as long as you have that item intact, you can just infinitely come in on rocks and not worry about them. And I love the speed tier that it provides on this team, and therefore I don't feel like always having to put a Scalper of any of my other mods when I have this option in the back to be there for speed control. And I love the fact that it also has Infiltrator, which is a very underrated ability as well, because then you can bypass substitute or screens as well, and it can be something that can be caught off guard by opponent if they always think that I'm running Frisk that week. But Frisk in general I think is gonna be very valuable in this league in itself when I'm going up against such a high competition, and knowing the items before it's too late from my opposing side can be very valuable asset to me. And therefore I was really happy to pick Noivern this time around yet again, I guess, when I already have it in UBL Season 5. But now let's jump in and see what I was able to select in round 6. And as my round 6 pick, I was able to select myself Diancie, and I love that Diancie came back to us as reintroduced mon for us in the DLC 2 expansion draft. And now in this generation it got access to Button Pass, which is a form of a momentum move that has been allowed. You cannot Button Pass stats or any form of kind, but you can use it as a momentum. So therefore with Diancie and Noivern, which I didn't mention, that which was pretty obvious I guess, that it gets access to U-turn, all of my members thus far still get a momentum move, which is a big part of what I was going after in this draft. And Diancie provides me also Stealth Rocks, which I didn't have yet, especially in my Crown type not getting access to them. And it also gives me a Cleric and a Flying Resist for my URSHIFU that I thought that was really important for me to add as well. And I love the fact that it also got Mystical Fire as a form of coverage move, so now it has access to Mystical Fire and Earth Power as a form of moves to hit steel types that would normally want to switching on Diancie. So this is going to be my round 6 pick, a very versatile and an underrated fairy type in a traffic format, but something that I have gotten used before as well, and I'm excited to use again. And now let's go and see what I was able to select in round 7. And as my round 7 pick, I was able to select myself Amoonguss, and Amoonguss is actually a mod that I wasn't looking at first, even though I'm forming a regenerator core with Slowbro, which is gonna be very annoying for my opponent. But I had a preference of drafting a more offensive poison type, but since most of them, or basically all of them that I was looking after, which would have fit with URSHIFU were already taken, I decided that I'm gonna be taking the bulkier route then and get a grounded poison type along with it. That is most important with your poison type when you're drafting it, that you provide yourself a toxic spikes immunity and absorber, and Amoonguss is gonna be providing us just that. It provides me another fighting resist and also a fairy resist for my URSHIFU that I was looking after with adding the poison type in general in itself, and with the Regener core with Slowbro Amoonguss I can form a very solid defensive backbone between those two, and then have more options for my offense and kind of take the pressure off from the Yancy and Rotom hit necessary for filling that kind of role if I know Amoonguss can do that job very well in itself. And it's gonna be forcing a little bit of items syndrome for my opponents, because it gets access to Spore as we know, and usually something that our opponents are feeling likely having to run one of their mons is gonna be safety goggles. And while that might deter me run Spore every single week, at least my opponent has to always second guess that do they have to run this item, and if they do, that's better for me obviously that they have to sacrifice that item over something else that could have been a lot more useful in the mon that they would be having on it. But that is going to be my 7th round pick, and now let's go and see what I was able to select in round 8. And as my round 8 pick, I was able to select myself Type Null, and this was somewhat underpriced in my opinion at 3 points out of 18 in the price category that they put in, and I wanted to take advantage of it. And I think on my team it's gonna be very important as a ghost check, because I don't necessarily want to use URSHIFU single strike or a Diggersby as a ghost check, because they rather be just offensive and get their free momentum and free turns to come in on our turns and not having to take on any kind of hit. And Type Noise more so they're tanking the hits along with Eviolite. It becomes so much bulkier than you give it credit for, and access to slow U-turn is gonna be really nice for my team. Unfortunately Amoonguss broke that chain that I had going on with all of my picks thus far having access to momentum, but we still have a few more picks to go, which I can add it on, and Type Null will be one of those additions that I can have. And that's pretty much for Type Null. Just be a bulky normal type and a slow pivot for my big attackers that I picked earlier. And now let's go and see what I was able to select in round 9. And as my round 9 pick, I was able to select myself Asif, and alongside with Diancie, these are going to be the 2 mons at least that I'm gonna be having that were reintroduced to us in this generation after DLC 2 expansion that we got in the game in itself. And to me, this mon was actually pretty critical in its sense for its speed tier, that it provides some more speed in general, being 150 base speed here, and provide me a second stealth rocker for this draft and a strong offensive psychic type with great move pool that it has access to as we know, and having access to Nasty Plot as a setup move is really nasty for itself. And I love the fact that it also gets access to U-turn, so we are keeping all the momentum options that I have on my team. And primarily this thing probably wants to U-turn on a bulky dark type or a bulky steel type that would want to wall this thing, and I have answers for both of those in URSHIFU single strike or Diggersby, or just basically URSHIFU in as general will kill both of those typings. So the offensive synergy is there for sure, and I wanted most importantly that speed tier to be solved, that I have something in that kind of category. So that's gonna be Asif as my round 9 pick. Excited to use it as first time in my draft league career. Actually, I never used it before. And now let's go and see what I was able to select in round 10. And as my round 10 pick, I was able to select myself Corviknight, and somehow this thing was still available to me to be able to draft. And the way I was spending points, I was actually spending less points than most of the teams, if any team around, throughout the entire draft. And that was duly my own fault, because I didn't really calc or do too much in-depth analysis on how many points the amount that we got was for 11 months. So therefore, as the draft went along, I started to realize that, oh, I have a little bit flexibility here to work with, and what would I want to go for. And there were other steel types that I was looking at as well, that I'm still tempted to free Ancient Zone if I feel like it, which would have been more offensive. But for now, I got pretty much talked into to use Corviknight once more in a draft, along with my friends, especially Milan really recommended me to pick this thing. And it was on my radar because I realized that it was still on the board for some reason, and we know with the still and flying typing it's a fantastic dual typing and great immunities that it has access to pressure ability, mirror armor, and unnerve. As we know this by now, as it's been around in Generation 8, it's a fantastic still type, one of the best in the format, and therefore it was kind of a criminal that I had an option to still pick it this late in a draft, and I'm really happy that I was able to do so. And I had it in UBO Season 4, where I was really happy how it was able to do its role, even though it wasn't as offensive on most of the weeks that I was using it as a setup set that it can do. Even as it's just a bulkier pivot, it's very good in what it does, and it fits pretty well on my draft, and giving me another mod with access to U-turn doesn't really ever hurt when you have mods like Diggersby and URSHIFU single strike that want to get that free turn when to come in on. And now I have 1 point left to spend, so let's go and see what is gonna be the 1 pointer that I decide to end out my draft. And as my last round pick, and kind of running out my draft with my 1 pointer pick, I was able to select myself Trapinch, which is the second time I have actually picked this thing in a draft league format, believe it or not. The first time around was my second draft league season in Generation 8, and since then I've been kind of thinking that I probably will pick it yet again if I need to pick the most lowest tier mon in that particular draft league format that I'm doing. And I'm doing it here once again thanks to the fact that it's a mod that at least forces preparation regards to its arena trap ability, therefore be able to trap anything that is grounded as long as it's not a ghost type or holding shell on it. And if I can force my opponent running shell, that is just beneficial for me getting that value out of my 1 pointer, which to me was pretty much all I could do with that slot in itself, how the draft unfolded folded for me, how I spent my points. But now, let me know in the comment section how you feel about this draft, what are the things that you like that I did, what are the things that you would have done differently, or you would like to see me changing on it throughout the season if I feel like it myself as well. There were some things that I worried about, that do I want to change certain aspect of my draft or not, but we have to wait and see how it's gonna be playing out. Maybe this team will start grow on me more than I've been thinking about it. I like the draft, but it's not something that I'm thinking like, oh, this definitely goes down one of my best drafts ever, at least for me right now. Maybe my mind changes on it once I get to use it throughout the season. And speaking of that, Week 1 will be going up on this very next Sunday, so 1 week from now, when we go up against Shaco King himself in Week 1, which I'm not necessarily worried about too much because of the fact that I'm not gonna be bringing by far my best team versus him in Week 1, because I expect him to be one of the favorites to win this season, including myself. So from my perspective, I'm gonna be kind of bringing my B team and see how well it's gonna be doing, and then I just focus from there and try to see if we get to have a rematch with him. But that's not here and there, that's for Week 1, and hopefully I get to see you guys coming back to see that game. And until next time, thank you for watching, and I'm gonna be seeing you guys later.